We have new information and it is not good. There are so many injuries to the tight ends position specifically leading up to week 1. We've got Travis Kelce with a hyperextended knee 48 hours before he takes on the Lions tomorrow night. We've got George Kittle with a groin injury, likely will not play this week. And Mark Andrews is dealing with his own injury as well. So we will assume in this particular tight end ranking video that Travis Kelce and all the rest of those guys will play and also will not play. So that means there's going to be a couple additional bonus guys to this top 12 tight ends list for week 1 fantasy football. So let's go ahead and get into the top 12 or top 14 tight end rankings in week 1 fantasy football. Starting out with Mark Andrews taking on the Houston Texans at home. Of course, I originally had Travis Kelce as the number 1 tight end, as I'm sure everybody else did in the entire planet. But the injury to Travis Kelce changes everything, even if he ends up playing. Because the reality is, if he even plays, he's going to be limited in this game, and he will probably not have a tight end 1 ceiling in this particular game. Now, Andrews himself, like we discussed earlier, he's dealing with his own injury as well. The difference is he's expected to play. He is already practicing this week leading up to the week. He's expected to go this week in week 1. So I have no issues at all, and I have full confidence that Mark Andrews is going to play this week. I've got no concerns about Mark Andrews. And the good thing about this matchup, like I've been saying all week, Houston's going to struggle this week. It's going to be a bad week for Houston. They're starting off on the road against a really tough team who's going to be in the playoff hunt this year. Baltimore's going to absolutely crush the Texans this week. And I think that Andrews is probably going to get a red zone touchdown this week. This is the type of game that he usually does get one in. I love the matchup. Andrews is going to get started really hot this season in week 1. Now moving down to number 2, I've got Darren Waller taking on the Dallas Cowboys in New York this week. I'll be honest with you guys about Darren Waller. He's not a guy that I've really talked a ton about this particular offseason. So a lot of you don't even know my opinions on Darren Waller season long. So right now, I'll tell you what my opinions are. I've had trouble buying into Darren Waller this particular season, and there's 2 main reasons why. The first factor is age. He's now in his 30s now, and the second factor is the injury history. I mean, this guy hasn't been healthy for the past several seasons, so it's really hard to decide on whether or not I think he's just done, or if I think that he can have a resurgence in a new offense, in a new situation. I'm on the fence on this one. I think he's got a great ceiling, and I think we're going to see it this week. We know week 1 he is healthy, so that's already a plus right there. And also, he's so clearly Daniel Jones' number 1 target in this offense. He's clearly the most talented. All the offseason reports have been that Darren Waller literally has been Daniel Jones' favorite target by a freaking mile. So those 2 factors alone lead me to having him this high on this week 1 matchup list for Darren Waller. Even in a tough matchup, Dallas is not an easy matchup. I'll tell you what, man, I am so fascinated to watch Darren Waller this year. It's not even funny, man. Week 1, I think he does great, though. Now, moving on to number 3, I've got TJ Hawkinson taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Minnesota this week. Obviously, coming off a beautiful tight end extension that makes him one of the highest paid tight ends in the NFL now. This is a great sign for Minnesota. Hawkinson is totally set up to succeed in 2023, and I expect him to absolutely start well in week 1. This is a really good matchup here, taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are absolutely going to struggle very similarly to Houston this year. There's really not much else to say here. Get ready to fire up TJ Hawkinson week 1. Now moving down to our next tier, I've got Dallas Goedert here at number 4, taking on the Patriots in New England here. Like I've been saying in every other video this week, I expect Philadelphia to struggle this week. Coming off the Super Bowl hangover, going to New England, taking on a very tough defense in week 1. Bill Belichick is going to be prepared here. He is fighting for his job at this point. Now, in my wide receiver rankings video this week, I discussed how A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith I think are going to struggle this week. Bill Belichick is notorious for taking away your number 1 option. I think this is actually going to be very good for Dallas Goedert. I think it's going to be a Goddard type of week, because the reality with Philadelphia's offense, they've got too much firepower for Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots to be able to cover all of them. That's why I think a guy like Dallas Goedert is going to shine in this situation. So at number 5, I've got Kyle Pitts taking on the Carolina Panthers at home in Atlanta. Did you miss Kyle Pitts? I'm genuinely curious, man, because I know he screwed so many people over last year. And honestly, I discussed this at the end of the year last year. I did a video at the end of the year where we discussed what we learned in 2022 fantasy football. And in that video, I discussed about how I know it's really easy when you draft a player really high to just give up on them when it doesn't work out. And I mean, if you remember last year, Kyle Pitts was going in like the 3rd round of fantasy football drafts. It was super, super high. So obviously his draft price dropped significantly this year, and I think it's for the best, honestly. But what I will say, I think his situation is better this year. This team has better weapons. The addition of Bijan Robinson, 2nd year for Drake London, 3rd year for Kyle Pitts, and the Atlanta offensive line is improving as well. So I actually think they're going to have a better offense this year than they did last year. Now, the quarterback situation is very similar. This is not an upgrade here with Desmond Ridder. I really dislike the decision to make Desmond Ridder the quarterback 1 in 2023. I really did not like that situation. But it feels like Atlanta could have a good week here against the young Carolina Panthers team with a new head coach in Frank Reich. Now, moving down to number 6, I've got David Njoku taking on the Cincinnati Bengals in Cleveland this week. So when you look at Cleveland's depth chart, for example, their pass catchers are really scarce. I mean, when you look at it, like, there's decent guys on paper. Like, obviously, Amari Cooper is going to be the wide receiver 1. Everybody knows that. I think Amari Cooper is set up for a lot of fantasy success this year. But when you look down past that, you're looking at guys like Elijah Moore, who I'm not really big on in particular, but I do think he definitely will be involved this season. And then you've got David Njoku. David Njoku is definitely going to be a pinpoint guy in this particular offense. He played really well for a long stretch last year. He's got a full offseason with Deshaun Watson under his belt now. I think he's going to be really good with Deshaun Watson because Deshaun Watson, dating back to Houston, really likes a good tight end. And the matchup isn't bad here against the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, it's a division matchup, so you don't know what's going to happen. But as far as Cincinnati's defense goes, it's not that scary. I'm expecting David Njoku to have a good week to kick off the 2023 season. I've got Pat Freiermuth taking on the San Francisco 49ers in Pittsburgh right here. I'll be honest with you guys really quick. I am low-key getting higher on Pittsburgh Steelers options in fantasy this week as we get closer to the week right here. Now, for those of you who don't know, I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, but I always say that my fantasy analysis comes first before being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And a lot of people think I'm hard on the Steelers, but the reality is, I think that this could be a really good week for them, actually. I think San Francisco's defense is going to struggle. They're looking like they're going to be without Nick Bosa. Not only does this affect the run defense and the defensive line and the front seven as a whole, obviously it affects all those things, but it's going to affect their pass defense as well. They're going to get more time to throw the ball without a beast up front going after the passer. And the San Francisco's defense, their weakness already last year was in the pass defense. They were number 21 in passing yards allowed last year. So Freiermuth obviously is one of the most consistent weapons in this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. You've got Deontay, you've got Freiermuth, and you've got Pickens. Those are your 3 guys right here. I think this could be a really good week for Pat Freiermuth in week 1, and that's why I have him ranked at number 7. So moving down to number 8, I've got Travis Kelce taking on the Detroit Lions. Like I said, we're going to plan on if he does or doesn't play in week 1. So first off, if he plays, he's going to be limited. He suffered a hyperextension knee 48 hours before the Detroit Lions matchup. Before they take on the Lions tomorrow, he suffered a hyperextended knee. And hyperextended knees are no joke. So either he's going to be limited physically or Kansas City is going to limit his snaps if he plays. Those are the 2 situations and the realities here we're dealing with in Travis Kelce's week 1 game. Now, obviously, he's still a Hall of Fame caliber player. So he has to be inside the top 10 tight end rankings in any particular week if he is playing. But I am leaning towards the side of him not playing because of how serious an injury this could be if not treated, and how close it is to their actual game. Now moving on to number 9, I've got Evan Ingram taking on the Indianapolis Colts here. It's really hard to tell what Evan Ingram's involvement is going to be in this particular offense this year. Obviously, Calvin Ridley complicates the situation here. Calvin Ridley should come in and absolutely command plenty of targets in this offense. But what I will say, and what I always say, is follow the money. Always make sure to follow the money. The Jacksonville Jaguars signed Evan Ingram to a 3-year, $41.25 million contract in the offseason. So he is still going to be heavily involved in this Jacksonville Jaguars offense. Now, the matchup does look good on paper, but what I discussed in the quarterback video earlier today is that Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars offense, I think they're going to get out to a very early lead this week and then really not have to throw the ball that much. With that said, I could definitely see a world where Evan Ingram gets a goal line touchdown in this particular week. So you never sit Evan Ingram, but I think his ceiling is going to be higher in other weeks besides week 1. Now moving down to number 10, I've got George Kittle taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers in that matchup in Pittsburgh. Assuming he plays, like I said with Travis Kelce, we're doing the same thing here with Kittle. He's going to be limited as well. Groin injuries also are very, very serious as well if you do not treat them. And Kittle has not practiced this week yet either. So this is a situation where if he does play, he'll be coming off a week with no practice, and he will definitely be limited in the actual game. Now with that said, obviously it's a similar situation to Kelce. He's got a high ceiling if he does play. That puts him inside the top 12 automatically if he is out there. But much like I do with Kelce, I lean on the side of him not playing this week. So moving down to number 11, I've got Cole Kmet taking on the Green Bay Packers at home. So a lot of people are definitely wondering about Cole Kmet's particular involvement in this offense this season. But again, very similar to Evan Ingram, this is a follow the money type of situation here. He signed a 4-year, $50 million contract extension with the Chicago Bears this offseason. So this team recognizes that Cole Kmet is an emerging player in the NFL, and he is going to be important to this offense. The Green Bay matchup here is good. I expect Kmet really to have a healthy workload really for the entire season, really. So dropping down to number 12, I've got Tyler Higbee taking on the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle right here. Isn't it funny how Tyler Higbee is always the type of guy who always gets left out to dry? I mean, every year, nobody's ever high on a guy like Tyler Higbee, and I can't really blame anyone. But let's think about this specifically in week 1. Cooper Kupp is likely out. Still meeting with a specialist, out of state. It's not going to be good. I don't think he's going to play in week 1. Van Jefferson, probably going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense in week 1. They're also going to fall very early in this game. Seattle is going to crush them. And so Los Angeles is going to be playing catch-up for a lot of this game. So Tyler Higbee, realistically, could see 8 to 10 targets in this game. He's one of their few healthy playmakers on offense right now. And this is a low-key, decent tight end start in week 1. If he's on your waiver wire, scoop him up if you have room, just to play keep away from someone if you don't plan on starting him. So moving to our 2 bonus guys for this week, in case Kittle and Kelce do not go, I've got Gerald Everett taking on the Miami Dolphins at home, and then I've got Greg Dulcich taking on the Las Vegas Raiders at home. So simply, Gerald Everett is on here because of this great matchup. It's going to be a shootout this week. Any weapon you can get in this offense is definitely a viable fantasy option this week. And then Greg Dulcich here also has a good matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. This team is also down 3 wide receivers, so he is definitely going to be involved this week. And I think Dulcich overall this year is going to be more involved in year 2 in this particular offense. So let me know what you think of these rankings in the comments below and what matchups you're struggling with in week 1 fantasy football. And if you're looking for the top 12 quarterback rankings in 2023 for week 1, click on this video right here.